We are live. Finally, once again. It's been a few months. You know, James went on a pilgrimage to Antarctica to save penguins, and I was just here waiting for him to come back.
Yep, something like that.
No, but we're happy to start season. This is season 6. That is 6 years we've been doing this. That's pretty crazy.
It's crazy.
Cool milestone. Kudos, buddy. We've been going on and on about it. What's new in James's world?
Oh, let's see. We've got our 4 kiddos now. Baby Clara is almost 3 months old, and after a little bit of a scare pre-pregnancy, she's super healthy. We're claiming our little miracle baby. She's 10 pounds now. Everything's checking all our milestones. We're real happy. The brothers fight over who gets to hold her.
Wow.
It's pretty fun. We've been enjoying since the new year, like eating at home more. Like kind of had a resolution to do more family dinners and, not be so rushed and go eat out. And so making some more food and things like that at home. Last weekend I took up baking. My wife wanted a mixer, like a stand mixer.
Stan is the brand now?
No, stand mixer is just the type. It's like one that like stands up and you
mixer?
have the bowl. Yeah, instead of the ones you like put the little guys on and do this whole.
Oh, like the egg beaters? Yeah.
It's like one that has the different mixing
like
attachments.
a KitchenAid?
Yeah, it's a KitchenAid. Yeah.
All the rage.
Yeah.
Moms.
She wanted one that had this pretty brass bowl on it, and she hadn't started.
What color did she get?
It's like it's a cream. You could see it on her Instagram, I'm sure. It's like a cream deal, and then has a brass.
What's the tag? What's the Instagram
What's her handle? Emily.Ryder.
Emily.Ryder.
Riter. But so she's got that on there. I'm sure you could LTK it if you wanted to have the same one she's got. No, shameless plug.
All right, let's the check from Emily is coming soon, right? The sponsorship.
It comes with like a bread hook, so you can, instead of kneading your own bread, it's kind of fascinating how it works. It like kneads the bread itself. Favorite bread I made was like, we want to get into sourdough. David Molman's really good at it. So I'm taking some lessons.
You've joined the cult of sourdough.
Joined the cult. Not yet.
Gosh, these people.
Working on my starter.
These people, these all they can talk about. We have 3 in the Pastoral Center. All they can talk about is, my sourdough starter's doing really well today, and I'm like, oh, great.
It is a game changer.
This is.
But you'll
how?
So you
James, how is it a game changer? It's a piece of dough you treat like a child and talk to it like it's a child.
A sourdough bread with butter on it, next to your pasta or whatever, is way tastier than store-bought bread.
Right. The tastiness of sourdough is not what I'm debating here. It's the decision to invest all of this time and emotional energy into, because sometimes your starters die or whatever.
That's
right?
Yeah, if you let it.
And if you botch it, and it's just like people's happiness is based on whether or not their starter dough is still alive or not.
That shouldn't be the case. You can just start over. But favorite bread I made was this like sausage and cheese bread. I borrowed it from.
Now I'm listening.
I looked up this recipe, but I was inspired by Betty Bodman and Rebecca Spawn, her daughter. They make this bread that's like, it's actually made out of a pizza crust. So I make the pizza crust dough, roll that out really thin, and then sprinkle the sausage and cheese and some peppers this time.
How fine do you have to get the sausage?
I did like ground sausage.
Oh, okay.
And then roll that up and leave like a little bit of extra room at the back that doesn't have the filling, so you can have a decent bottom layer. Roll that up, put it in the oven for 20 minutes. Pretty good.
All right.
We made ours a little more Italian tasting than the others, so it was like Parmesan cheese and mozzarella cheese, and dipped that in mozzarella or marinara sauce. It tastes like a calzone. It's pretty tasty.
That does sound tasty. I will say that, but it does crack me up. People and their sourdough. That's when you could just go buy a loaf of sourdough and be done with it.
That's right. If you value your own time at some earning capability hour per hour, I've tried to work that out in my head. It'd have to be a lot of sourdough I was making at once to make
to justify
it. But if it's a pastime and you're enjoying it,
it's a hobby like anything else.
It does say it is cheaper to do it that way and fresher. You don't have all the. I'm convinced a lot of the gluten intolerant stuff like where you can't eat bread and carbs is because we're eating food that has all this extra junk crammed in it, whereas like sourdough bread only has a few ingredients. So
I just recently started learning about these red dyes that we're not supposed to give to our children.
You've been
and
like
different things.
listening to some Make America Healthy Again stuff, or
No, Chris was just telling me, he was like, yeah, we can't give this to Faustina because it's got red dye number 4 now in it. And I was like, what's that?
it is fascinating. Some of those dyes, like you can't buy food products with them in like Europe and other countries, but in America, we're just like, yeah, whatever, manufactured food, we're good.
One of these. Avery's like, why are we talking about this still? Well, it's fascinating and all of that stuff. And other news, my niece was born this morning.
Nice.
So I'm excited to go visit her whenever we finish up here, which will be great. But the rest of my siblings have gotten to be aunts and uncles within the 8 of us this whole time since Peter was born. But I've been left out. Now I'm finally in.
Now you're an
within
uncle.
our family. I'm also like technically my first niece was Danielle's sister, had her baby a couple of months ago in October.
Nice.
But this one is my little sister's baby, which will be great. Little Wendy.
Fun. What's Wendy's full name?
It's either Wendy Diana or Wendy Diane Palmer.
Okay. Nice.
Or not, she's not Palmer, Terry.
Okay. Cool.
Sister's last name changes. You gotta remember that sometimes. Yep. How good are you at changing maiden names when women get married, like in your contacts?
Oh, not that great. Like my friend Erin Scanlon, it took a long time. At one point I was like, okay, I'm gonna make her Erin Valbo now.
Yeah, you kind of have to make a decision. Like Apple kind of made it easier because people can update their names.
Oh,
that
yeah,
like
and
automatically
you can
updates.
see it, yeah,
which is nice as well. But sometimes there's definitely people that I still haven't changed their last name.
This is fascinating. We have a friend at school that, well, our friend isn't at the kid's school, but their sibling was doing some like babysitting for us, so we were picking her up from school, and I was so confused why in the car line she wasn't getting picked up, and I was using this like, almost 40-year-old woman's old name, like taking that old name onto her child. And so I'm like with the teacher, I'm describing her name, and she's like, you mean this person? And I was like, oh, okay. She's like, that is her grandparents' name. I was like, oh, I don't. Then I asked my wife, I was like, you didn't even know her when she was not married. Like, how did this work? She's like, I don't know. I must have got the contact file from someone who knew her in high school. So we've been thinking impressive. This person was had a different last name for 10 years.
Yeah. I've got a fun gauntlet this weekend. I bought Peter a bed from Amazon.
Nice.
So I'm going to be building that. Who knows how good the instructions are going to be. It's got to be like an IKEA bed style, like going to be really hard, but I'm excited to dig into it this weekend.
You're actually surprise
excited? Him. Yeah, I am excited. I'm excited for the moment he's going to see it.
That's right.
Because his bed stinks right now, and not like smells, but just his
talking like it's a dog bed.
Yeah, we just don't clean it. We don't.
Yeah, it's been soiled too many times.
It's been soiled too many times, and he just sleeps. Yeah, no.
So it just doesn't stink. It's subpar.
Yeah. It's just not a bed, not a cool bed. But this is gonna be a nice one.
Nice. Any theme to it, or it's just a big boy bed?
There's gonna be like underneath. There's gonna be like a clubhouse type thing that you can go underneath.
So is it bunk bed-ish, or
it's a little lofted, not like all the way lofted where it's at that height, but just enough that you can get on your hands, knees, and get under there.
Heck yeah!
So I think he'll really enjoy that. It has some like bookshelves and drawers and different things. As I'm saying all of this, I'm realizing how much time I'm gonna be spending on this this weekend. But for the bedspread, Sonic the Hedgehog is all the rage in our house right now.
Next session of banter, we'll ask Jayce how the bed assembling went.
My hair's just gonna be like pulled out, and it's just like super difficult. But yeah, we can check. We can certainly check in on our next thing. So recently, over the new year, so it's like January 17th or something right now, and so over the new year, we always go to Seek every single year. And this year, our youth office, we went out to Salt Lake City. Beautiful city, very clean, very like I really, really liked it. And like just surrounded by mountains, like better than Denver. The views of the mountains, in my
Really?
opinion, are. Yeah, I mean, the only thing holding it back is it's dominated by the LDS Church.
Yeah.
But
LDS and Mormon people, when they do something, they do it right.
They do.
They do a great job.
They're very good. They're the best. They're the best evangelizers. They have the best software to help evangelizers. Like there's a lot of really
investing, movie production. I mean, media. They're really good.
Yeah, they're doing stuff. They got the Studio C, which is like the Christian version of SNL, and it's actually funny.
Really?
If you know, like, you ever seen the Scott Sterling videos?
I'm interested.
We'll watch some videos.
Okay.
But if you haven't heard of Scott Sterling, do that. Scott Sterling Soccer. Some YouTube.
You say it's the Christian version, so do they allow Christian content, or is it?
Sorry, I say Christian. When I say Christian, I mean like they're not saying F-bombs or or not cracking sex jokes.
It's a wholesome version, we'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wholesome version. Yeah. Mormons aren't Christian, so we can't call it that. But we went to the cathedral there for Mass a lot of the time because now that I'm 31, going to Mass with 20,000 people wasn't as exciting. I did it for the opening Mass, and I was like, cathedral, I have to wake up a little earlier, but I think I'm going to, and walk a little farther, but I think it'll be worth it.
Avery's laughing at your old age. Or something else, we're not sure.
And we're just putting everybody on blast, crunchy people, Mormons. But we went to the cathedral there, and the cathedral was specifically crafted. Like some of the architecture, some of the artwork, some of the different scripture passages that they put on the wall were specifically calling out Mormons.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it would have like, if anyone presents a gospel other than the one that I've proposed to you, let that person be anathema. Big gold letters, like the Catholic version of a neon sign.
Like it was contextually appropriate for where this cathedral sat.
Yeah, and they could have been much more, like at the time that they had to have built this cathedral, like the Mormon population had to be even more of a majority than it is now. So they could have gone a much more just like subtle way of going about it. But in a Catholic church, those were the equivalents of a giant neon sign saying Mormonism bad, which is I was kind of proud of in a way of like that they were being that bold with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the two cathedrals aren't far from each other, like the big old Mormon temple or whatever it's called. We had a great time, but what we're talking about today comes from Seek, and we do this every year. There's always one talk that I'm like, I want to talk about this talk.
Speaking of Seek, before we drill into it, isn't there like next year? I feel like a lot more of us should be able to go because isn't there like multiple locations? And
there's
in Texas or something.
It's an interesting move by Focus. So for the long time, there's been one main location for Seek. Like this year, it was mostly in Salt Lake, but they had an East Coast location. But that East Coast location wasn't. It was kind of a tester run, so it wasn't even the fullness of what they were hoping for. But next year, there's 3 different locations for Seek. There's one in the east for Columbus, Ohio, and then in Denver for the west, and then in Dallas, Texas.
Nice.
So I've already been starting to put a beat into the powers that be here that we should be sending a lot of our staff.
I think we should. I would love to go. I haven't been able to go to one. One thing that's compelling, like I think maybe the idea came up, post-COVID when they had all these satellite locations and there was some simulcasting. But I think if I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, the 3 different locations, it's not really going to be simulcasting. It's like 3 Seek conferences with keynote speakers. And
I think they're all going to have different keynotes, but I think the keynotes will be simulcasted.
Okay, so there might be like a big thing each day that's simulcasted, and then there's separate. All the breakout sessions are localized. And
I would guess that like each keynote, one of the 3, they're going to rotate through one of the 3 different spots.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
It's neat, and they did that for one of the things, and it was pretty darn seamless. It was just like, oh wow, Sister Miriam James is here. Like,
nice.
It was when you're in a big room like that, you're not sitting close enough most of the time to like really get to see them live. You're kind of watching the TV screen, so I didn't notice a huge difference. Yeah. But the very first talk was given by a guy named Arthur Brooks, who I really hadn't heard of. previous to this. But I'd actually decided going in, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be, the crotchety chancery worker who goes to the conference and is like, I've already heard these talks before. I'm going to skip it tonight and whatever. And I'm going to go. And I'm going to this is for me too. And so we went, and I didn't know who Arthur Brooks was opening night, but was excited to give it a shot. And the introduction for this guy was mind-blowing that he was speaking at a SEEK conference. First off, he's a big-time Harvard professor. He's Time Magazine's top 50 world leaders right now. He's been in the business world for a certain amount of time. He's written many books, one of them with Oprah somehow, but he's also this super awesome Catholic teaching at Harvard University. And what he teaches, when people ask him what he teaches, it's interesting. And he's like, I teach happiness. And then people laugh and say, no, seriously, what do you teach? And he says, happiness. And he drills a little bit more into that. And his class is called The Science of Happiness. It's kind of a catchy title. And it is the most popular elective at Harvard University right now. There's 150 spots. They're all taken. The wait list is 450 people long. There's an illegal Zoom link where people are trying to stream his class.
No way.
So people can just watch it.
Yeah, I didn't get off the wait list, but I want to see what the secret sauce is. Yeah.
Right.
That's cool.
Which is fascinating, which I think is so important for us to understand the dire want to be happy is the desire that as evangelists we have to get better at cultivating and bringing into our gospel presentations and the way that we think and the way that we present things to people.
Do you think this guy's do you think students look up to him as more than a professor probably? Do you think he has a mentor-like quality, with office hours and things like that? Or?
Yeah, I would say so. In his talk, and if you've seen his talk, then you can probably hit skip on this podcast because we're just going to go through a lot.
Or just think through it again with us. Yeah.
Yeah, and talking it, but he gets his office hours get used extensively, and this isn't just some nice elective that's easy. It's he goes into the neuroscience, the brain science, it's crunchy real stuff where you have to do work and memorize everything like a biology class. But when they come to his office hours, they don't tend to ask him about that stuff. He, in his talk, he discussed there's the main questions that he would get asked. The first one being, how do I fall in love, get married, stay married, and have a family? Number one question he gets asked.
At Harvard.
At Harvard.
Pretty cool.
At Harvard, all these people who are you'd presume have worked their entire high school careers to get into Harvard, and now
you would presume that the driving force of a Harvard or any Ivy League person might be a careerism pursuit sort of, and that sounds to be the higher rung of desire than careerism.
Right. And so there's that one. And the second one is that this guy is really not ashamed of his faith and says early on in his class, my Catholic faith is the most important thing in the world to me outside of my family. And they say, you said this, could you tell us more about that, please? Which just makes me think of
John Senior
and all of them. So he basically gives this talk on the science of happiness. We're going to go through it all. But if you've read the Nicomachean Ethics, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, by Aristotle.
Sounds like you haven't read it.
I've read significant parts of it for classes, actually.
Spell that for myself in the
yeah, I'm not going to be able to spell that.
Say it again.
Nicomachean Ethics. It's what is the Nicodemus?
Okay.
I believe is some of the things for that. But anyway, he basically takes those and slaps an MBA on it, and that's where a lot of the brain sciences come and has come to support the philosophy of why people are happy and why people are not happy. And so at Harvard, they will pick people out of the crowd and make them force them to try to answer questions that they're not prepared to answer. It's like something that Harvard prides themselves on.
Mm-hmm.
So first day he'll point to different students and say, "What is happiness? Define it." And they'll say, I don't know. And as he goes through his students, the main thing that he hears a lot is like, "I don't really know exactly what it is, but I know it when I feel it.
I know what it feels like.
I know what it feels like."
Yeah.
And the reality is like those feelings are just evidence of happiness. Like in the same way that the smell of a Thanksgiving turkey is evidence that the food is almost ready on Thanksgiving, but it isn't the actual food. A turkey is made of, carbohydrates, proteins, different things like that. Whereas happiness also has like macronutrients that are the main things that are contributing to those happiness. So the three things that he would say are the happiness macronutrients. It's so funny to say it this way.
That is a funny way to say it.
And enjoyment being number one, and we'll go into exactly what that means. Satisfaction, taking joy in your accomplishments, and meaning overall. And I just want to talk about how, like, we talk about happiness. I just think this is the perfect precursor step, because you and I have said over and over till we're blue in the face, like, that God is what's going to make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And his whole premise of this talk is that happiness is the gateway drug to heaven.
Oh, cool.
And that if you hone really deeply into some of these things, that it is very naturally going to lead you towards the faith, essentially. Like it's a beginning step, and it's similar to like a principle and foundation from Saint Ignatius.
It's like the starting place.
As a starting place.
Are these hierarchical? Enjoyment, satisfaction, meaning?
No, I think that there are
three components.
Three components, and none of us are good at all of them.
Okay.
Was something that he was really forceful about. Like, and this is like the best part about this.
Yeah, someone who's really good about like pursuing meaning might not take it slow and enjoy life, for example. Whereas in someone who's maybe a little more present to the moment, laissez-faire, might spend less time pursuing the satisfaction from hard labor or something to that effect.
Yeah, exactly. So there's something for all of us to practice and get better at. And so his whole idea was, I'm a spy. I'm basically a focused missionary at Harvard because they're asking me these questions in my office hours. Mm-hmm. And I want to teach you how to be a spy too, and how to explain happiness, because it's obviously within the world. We talked about the religion of the day all last year, like 8 episodes of it. This is something that they want, that is a real desire that they can't get rid of because they're human. Mm-hmm. And if we are able to capitalize on some of the science behind some of this stuff and some of the thoughts, and like introduce a little bit of that philosophy, but call it an MBA, it'll be really attractive.
I like that.
Is the idea. So enjoyment. He's really quick to talk about what enjoyment is not. And it isn't just pleasure. And he talks about the three parts. He kind of simplifies the brain into 3 major parts in the way that we see the world, right? There's the reptilian brain, the piece of you like, I am aware of what the temperature is in this room. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit cold, but I'm not like constantly, it's not like in my brain thinking about that. It's just something that you become aware of. Or I'm aware that I'm a little bit hungry, but it's not in my prefrontal cortex. It's not in the human part of my brain yet. It's just like, it's there. It's your way of bringing information in as a human. Because if all of the information that our brain was aware of was in our consciousness, we would
be overdrive.
We'd be in overdrive. We wouldn't know anything. So we have our reptilian brain. He talks about. Then we collect that data, and that data gets processed and sent through our limbic system, right? And our limbic system is a neuroscience part of the brain where a lot of our feelings and everything develop. I am cold. That makes me unhappy, or it's uncomfortable for me. I'm hungry, and that's uncomfortable for me. Or somebody yelled at me, and I don't feel safe, or whatever that is. A lot of those feelings, he would call those feelings, are not not a human part of you. That we actually share this part with all mammals. Still, it's not to the human part of us yet, and it's just data coming in, and then as all of that data comes in, we get to our prefrontal cortex, and we decide what to do with that data. There are a lot of people in the world that will immediately react and move with whatever their limbic system is telling them, whatever those feelings, whatever those emotions are discussing, without regard to anything from the prefrontal cortex. Those people are called children, and the art of growing up is tapping more and more into that adult, that human piece of you, and instead of like immediately responding to whatever emotion, whatever data is coming in, you're learning to filter it through and make decisions, be like, no, I don't have to feel this way right now, in different things, which is fascinating. So back to enjoyment. Pleasure is a purely limbic type of thing. It is an animal instinct. It's an animal desire, not innately bad, but is this animal desire. And so we're trying to move for happiness. You have to be human is like the key thing that he wants to drive home here on the enjoyment side. So we have to move this pleasure from the limbic system to our prefrontal cortex. And he gives two main things that helps move that. And like, so you want to be in an area where you are receiving some sort of pleasure, but the two things that you have to add to that pleasure to create happiness is people and memory. So whatever that thing is, if you're doing it only by yourself, or if you're just playing video games by yourself, or playing with strangers that there's no real friendship component to it, that you're like they're not even real humans or really other real people, like it's not going to scratch that happiness, enjoyment itch for you. If you're going like, the easiest way for me to describe it for myself, I feel, is like if I go. Like my favorite thing in the world right now is disc golfing. I'm playing a ton of it. I go by myself. I'm having a good time, but there isn't a whole lot that's really memorable about it. And I'm way happier afterwards if there was somebody there who I got to spend the time with and enjoy it with and like create the memory. So that's a really important thing to pay attention to is engaging people and memory in that.
Fascinating. If we don't have people in memory, it stays a limbic experience,
and doesn't just contribute to your overall feelings of how things are going. It just is it's just a quick hit, essentially, in all of that stuff, and doesn't translate, doesn't build in yourself, into your sense of self, and all of that other stuff. And this is like a cursory thing below it, but. So you go from reptilian brain to your limbic, into the prefrontal cortex. And whenever we tell our kids like use your words, don't just like get all mad and stuff. What we really want to be saying is don't be so limbic.
Actually process this.
This as a human. So that's the first of all of those macronutrients is enjoyment. The second one being satisfaction in your accomplishments, and the easy way.
Is it specifically in your accomplishments?
Mostly it's kind of referring to when you do something hard, the suffering that you have. If you save up for the car and you forego and you suffer and you don't get to eat out anymore for a certain period of time, but you finally get the car, you are satisfied. If you study really hard for an exam and get your A, you feel satisfied. By that. If you work really hard for a project and the project goes well and your company makes money or whatever, there is a satisfaction there.
So satisfaction he's talking about isn't necessarily like a full stomach from eating, but it's like
he even uses that as an example of like if you eat a snack at 3:00 and you have this beautiful dinner later on. And you're just not that hungry for it, you're not as satisfied.
Yeah.
But if you allow yourself to suffer a little bit and to feel the pangs of hunger for a little bit extra, man, that dinner somehow tastes better.
Yeah.
Right? So he's kind of referring to it in that way. And the beautiful and interesting part of our brain is because we were designed to be hunters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he uses the fancy word homeostasis, where our brains, because we achieve all of these things,
Mm-hmm.
and we're still never really satisfied. So we can achieve satisfaction, we just can't keep satisfaction. In homeostasis, our brain resets and literally does a reset of, okay, that was great, next hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Is essentially what happens within our brain, and wipes it. And we still have our drive. We still have our desire to go and accomplish something, to the ability to sift through and deal with whatever challenges may come. And so there's a satisfaction in our accomplishments that really only grows over time, because once we achieve one thing, we want to go to the next thing. That's part of being human. So he proposes a change in that, and going for your joy after struggle and eating your delayed gratification, is that you do. It's basically the formula to satisfaction is a math problem, and the numerator of your math problem, the top side of the fraction, is what you have.
I remember this. Yeah.
And the bottom of it is divided by the things that you want. And one way to make a number of satisfaction a lot bigger is to increase the numerator, buy more stuff. But at the same time, as you buy all this stuff, the things that you want tends to grow. And so your satisfaction number really doesn't change.
I love that.
And so the key to getting a higher number for satisfaction is actually decreasing the denominator, the lower
To want less.
To want less.
It's fascinating. I don't know if we talked about it on here or not, but the scripture passage, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." There's like at least two meanings to that, right? And it's really related to this numerator and denominator. Like in some sense, like if the Lord is my shepherd and he's where most of my desires fixated and the things I want, well, then I really don't want other things anymore. Like I still get to the satisfaction from receiving other things or earning other things, but I really only supremely want the Lord. And so then when something else comes in, it's more satisfying, right? But then there's this other reality that I don't want because the Lord is providing the top part of the numerator, right? And so he's providing things. So actually, I don't need to want because I'm being provided for. And so it's kind of cool that even in Scripture reinforces what he's saying here is like you get to play with both of them. The higher leverage is on the denominator of wanting less. But it's almost mystical when you really play with it, because even I would argue, if you play with decreasing your wants, like fixating yourself on Christ and being satisfied with what you already have and appreciating and being full of gratitude, well, then you actually start to notice even more the wants that come into the top part of the numerator, if that makes sense. Like you start to notice that like, oh, I actually have a lot. And while you notice that you have a lot and you're decreasing your wants, that a lot that's already being provided for you is so much greater than what you wanted anyway.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why
what a
you
virtuous
can
cycle.
see people who don't have a lot but be way more satisfied and fulfilled and content. It's because they've been doing a great job of, like, there's so many things that go into the thing, decreasing the things you want. There's attachment, there's gratitude, that are two really key components to having those things, being detached from the things that you have. Like I could have this, I could not have this. You know, like you've said, like I rely on the Lord and serve at his mercy. And if he sees fit to give me these things, great. And if he doesn't, then it's going to be good for me ultimately in the long run. So that's a fascinating component, macronutrient.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's actually more of I think one reason why it's more leverage to focus on the denominator is there's more of a limitation to the numerator. Like there's only so many hours in the day, dollars in your bank account, whatever that you could put towards the wants. Like at some point you hit a point where I can't physically add to my own wants anymore. But when you kind of take the counterintuitive step of decreasing the things you want, and you're kind of, I'll choose another word, like your expectations. Like I would almost say It's a little different, but you could put reality, like of what I have and what I'm getting at the top part, and then expectations in the denominator, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so if your expectations start to change to none or very little or very essentials, it's interesting. Like there's a certain point where I can't add to what I have anymore. But if I focus on not wanting much or only wanting the supreme things, well then, like first principles and God, well then what I have can actually be supplied by others, by the Lord, by sacrifice, by suffering. And that has a, greater ability to compound than me going and getting what I want all the time.
And all of these things, remember, like being really good. We're not all like, if I'm good at any of these things, like enjoyment is probably one of the things that I'm best at on here. And enjoyment and meaning, I would say, are the two. The satisfaction thing, I am terrible at. That's where I want to focus and get better at. But before I get into some of that stuff and like the different knobs that we can turn in our lives and different ways we can rely upon the Lord that can help us with this, let's finish and like talk about meaning overall. So he talks about there's two main questions.
I love this.
That derive from meaning, and that he uses, and it's a test. And you can do this test in a million different ways. It doesn't have to be exactly these two questions, but it's really important that you answer it for yourself and don't just like steal somebody else's. Like actually think about this. And if you don't have answers to these questions, that's actually a good thing because it reveals to you that there's something for you to look for, for you to seek. And so the first thing is, why are you alive? The meaning of life, blah, 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 all that stuff. And if you were to die today, what would you die for happily? Persons, causes, different things. And the answer to those two questions really is where you can derive a whole lot of your meaning in your life.
Yeah.
Like easy ones for us would be like our families, right? Easy ones for us would be for our faith. For Dr. Brooks's son, who really struggled with figuring out where those two things, those meanings early on. But then he went to the military and all of those meaning things fell in line for him.
Yeah, it became clear. I'll die for freedom. I'll die for my country. I'll die for my family. I'll die for truth,
Yeah. All of these different things. And it's important.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people will say, I don't know, nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like a common refrain for the world and even maybe for lots of us at some point in our life would be to the first question, why do you exist? It might be an I don't know. And then what would you die for? I don't really want to die. Might be the honest two answers.
And those are great answers. But I think it really reveals that there's not a whole lot that means something to you.
That's right.
And we're designed as humans to like, the second that comes out of our mouths that I really don't care about anything, like this is why the mental health crisis is so bad. Like the meaning is a really key part of it. And the meaning is a part that the religion of the day attacks with perpetuity and tries to fill it in different things and tries to take that meaning into the satisfaction area, but they're separated.
It's interesting, like the second question I'm chewing on, I feel like a lot of the world's honest answer, like can't be an answer because it's like a null, like it's a self-referential answer. And what I mean by that is like, what would you die for? Well, at first, it's like an honest answer for most of us is, well, probably nothing. And then if you just change the question slightly, like, what are you willing to take risks to prevent? And it's like, well, at all costs, I want to prevent like loss and death and suffering, right? So in some sense,
reputation,
I'm actually like not even like earthly death, but death to self. I'm actually not interested in death. Like I actually want to run from anything that looks like death as much as possible. I want to whitewash death, whitewash suffering. And so it's in some sense, it's even just asking the questions very valuable because most of us aren't asking it. Like, what would I suffer for? What would I die for? What would I deny myself for?
I'm not trying to suffer.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to avoid that question.
Yeah. So pulling it back to like what this means for us, like I can't wait. Tomorrow morning, we're leading a high school confirmation retreat. And in the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, we confirm people in 6th grade. So we're leading this retreat for a percentage of people who haven't been to Mass in
Are you going to
years.
ask them why they exist and what they're going to die for?
I'm doing this exact thing.
Yeah.
I've been doing confirmation stuff for a while. It's embedded into the culture, into the American Catholicism and all of that. And Archbishop Cookley, and I wholeheartedly agree, has moved it back a little bit to 6th grade, more time for grace. I'm not here to talk about exactly that, but there's always been a tradition of having a retreat attached to that. And so often, because of the way that we've done catechetics, the way that we've done retreats for the last 50 years here, it's been very class-oriented, very knowledge-oriented. These are the fruits of the Holy Spirit. This is what confirmation does. Maybe there's a Mass, maybe there's a little time in adoration. But what I've come to discover, like I'm giving an impassioned talk to somebody in high school who hasn't been to Mass in 5 years, and his parents are probably making him be there, and it's very hard. And so I'll see the eyes roll into the back of his head, do this while I'm cracking the funniest joke that I've ever made. Like I prepare hard for these because of how intensely disinterested in church
people are.
these people are.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been a part of their life, but all of a sudden it has to be because I need to get confirmed because my mom wants me to be confirmed. And so I changed my mind. Instead of taking this one shot with them to like get them the truth one last time before they're gone forever, which is the fear. I have adapted the way that I think, and I want to give them a good experience of church for the first time. So we're spending the morning playing these like awesome games with them that are inspired by shows that they've watched, that they're going to get to compete for like their favorite candy, which is Nerds Gummy Clusters, by the way, most popular candy in America right now, but with teenagers.
Is that better than Nerds Rope, or is it just small pieces of
Nerds Rope? It's actually some small pieces of Nerds Rope.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, very good. Better than the rope, because the rope was just kind of unwieldy.
So you're working on enjoyment and satisfaction there.
Yeah, enjoyment. Yeah, in a way, enjoyment and satisfaction. But the whole time they're spending time with these small group leaders and just having a good time with them. And so we're like, we only have a day. Building trust in a day is really, really hard, but they're going to have a lot of fun doing that. And then in the second half of the day, I'm going to go through Science of Happiness and just talk about this. And really, like you guys have mentioned, like we're talking about this from a really Catholic lens, but it's really easy to do this from a fairly secular point of view and just from a scientific point of view. And people are going to be like, oh, that totally makes sense. And doesn't inspire this. Well, that doesn't affect me at all because you're talking about Jesus and I don't believe in Jesus. So giving them that and giving them, like the goal is to convince them to seek something. And hopefully that they're going to get a little taste when we ask them after that talk, what are those 2 meaning questions for you? And we're going to hear a whole bunch of I don't knows or I don't really want to die and all of that stuff, which is going to be really good for them to know about themselves. And then we're going to do, like I'm just going to do a brief history of salvation history lesson of, hey, you're Catholic. I want to talk to you about how the whole world has gone down. And it'll be great.
That's cool.
But enjoyment, satisfaction, meaning, there's not all of us are not good at all 3 of these things. I am very easily, my homeostasis resets really quickly. I would assume that yours does too. It tends to happen for really, really driven people. So my satisfaction stuff, I want everything, and I don't have a lot either. So it's just like it can be a really easy thing to be grumpy in that area, and that's where I want to decrease my wants.
Quick question on satisfaction to your point there with the homeostasis. So does working on this numerator denominator thing of, working on the decreasing what I want and then still obviously pursuing some of the numerator, of things to have, does that increase the time of homeostasis or like the frequency of homeostasis?
I'd have to take the class to find that out. But that sounds...
Because I
bet you homeostasis happens regardless.
Because I think there's probably 2 problems in the satisfaction spot, like, or 2 weaknesses, like speaking from experience. And I think one weakness is maybe being like overly good at getting to homeostasis, like working hard, sacrificing, and then getting to that moment of enjoyment, of satisfaction that you accomplish something. And if you're really good at that, and let's say you're getting
You
some
reset right away, and
let's say you're getting some like pretty big wins on the what I want thing, going into the science of like dopamine, for example, like if you get a high in dopamine, which you usually do for anything in this satisfaction category, like let's say it's a big work related success. You worked out this milestone, you got there, and it's like the biggest you've ever had. Well, you're going to have a big rise in dopamine. Well, after that's over, your fall in dopamine is deeper than the rise was from your baseline. And so you go even lower beyond. So in some sense, like while you have experience and you have the high satisfaction, now you need a bigger thing to rise you back up. Or you need to have things in your life that are smaller things that get you back to baseline better. And so it's interesting. I think someone who's like polarity really good at this satisfaction part on the numerator side of things probably struggles with never being content, like never being happy in an achievement. And never's probably the wrong word. They're like shortly happy. And then they're sort of crashing into this like, well, you know, what's next? And the what's next, because it's such a low drop on dopamine, could be kind of disparative. And then the other one would be maybe the polarity of someone who's just like that, not really motivated to go get satisfaction.
yeah,
And so I think it's wise that he talks about focusing on the denominator, because in either of those cases, wanting less is helpful. But it's interesting if I'm really low on that, like I'm kind of lazy and not motivated by anything, I probably do need to work on meaning in order to be interested in achieving something. It's kind of a fascinating paradigm.
Yeah. So, I mean, pray with those three things and like consider them, because they're things that the
And the
Lord
two
wants for you.
questions to take to the journal to talk about with a friend, maybe, so it gets to our prefrontal cortex, are why do I exist, and what/who would I die for?
Yeah. Why are you alive? What would happily that you die
No.
for? Happily. I think that makes a difference.
Would I happily die for?
Yeah.
You'd be excited to die for. You'd feel emboldened.
Yeah. It would just
Strike at
I
your
get to
core.
do- yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here
Like,
for
of
it.
course I'm going to do this.
Yeah. And so I think that my main challenge is like we're kind of coming to a close here for us, is that like there is a serious win here within the way that our culture operates if we begin to communicate in this way early. And the other key piece of this is happy people are leaders.
Mm-hmm.
People follow happy people because they want to be happy. And if we're happy as missionaries and evangelists, then people are going to want that happiness and are going to follow us all the way to heaven because of happiness.
Yeah.
Which is hysterical.
Especially if this happiness is like coming from life in all three of these categories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, it's extremely attractive. Like, even if I'm fully secular, right? If I can see that someone has meaning in their life and they're pursuing something. So they're like, even if I can't describe all the things about it, or I don't even know what their meanings derive from or what they're pursuing, that person's really attractive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to be about them. Like, I think of, you know, even like after my formation, when I was sitting down with Father Jerome one time, I was like, man, you're the type of person that's moved by something, you know, and I can tell you are, like, obviously, like becoming a priest or being sold out in your vocation to marriage, or like being a on fire Catholic, like or devoted. I can see that, but there's something here, like there's a life in you, like you're moved by something. And I know that those are, you know, archetypal parts of it, like your vocation and the priesthood and the Catholic faith. But there's there's some meaning you're pursuing. Like, what is it? Mm-hmm. Like, I was just innately curious. And I think you're right. Like, those people blaze a trail and folks want to follow them.
100%. So I think that the more that we can use these things, use these natural tools to help us become more happy, we're going to be a more effective evangelist from the start of it. But also, it's just the most beautiful jumping off point, the beautiful meeting people where they're at point, where you don't have to say Jesus, but it points there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really clear that that's, and if you're the one living out your life in a happily way. So I really think that this has given us a better way of saying happiness is a need and a goal in a human, and this is a way of achieving that. But you're really just like, why are you alive? The only thing that makes sense ultimately, like intellectually, honestly, is like who made the world, and asking all of those
Yeah,
questions.
I was created.
So it's just a beautiful place to start the search.
And so, yeah, in some sense, if I give a weak sauce answer to why do I exist, like I kind of know that it's weak.
You immediately know.
If I give a why I exist that's kind of halfway there, I'm left with a hunger to keep asking questions about the why do I exist thing. Yeah.
So it's just a beautiful way to stoke that curiosity, and a beautiful tool that I don't think that we've had access to in the easiest way before.
Love it.
So go after that. I'm sure I'll talk more about this again.
Should we have people email in why do I exist and what would I die for? That'd be pretty awesome.
That'd be fun. Yeah, the email's somewhere in the show notes, and producer Avery will throw it in there. We'd love to read a couple of those. Actually, it'd be really interesting.
That'd be neat.
That'd be a really cool follow-up episode. But anyways, this has been Red Dirt Catholics. I'm Jayce.
And I'm James.
We'll see you next time.